The new Las Vegas Raiders, same as the old Las Vegas Raiders, and the Oakland Raiders before them, cleaning house once again. Head coach Josh McDaniels, GM, all fired. What's going on with the Raiders? And Falcons bench their quarterback. All that and more coming up on this November edition of Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love all the everydayers out there. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Matt, first question on this mailbag episode that you can always hit us at Twitter and the YouTube comments. The biggest story, obviously, in the NFL is the Las Vegas Raiders right now firing their head coach and their GM on 10 p.m. West Coast time, 1 a.m. for you, Matt. I don't know if you got the alerts while you were sleeping or if you were still up when this all went down. So odd timing after the trade deadline. The first question I got was, did Mark Davis just want to steal the thunder from everybody else in the NFL? So everybody was talking about the Raiders in the morning, except for the teams that were making deals at the trade deadline.
I don't think that had something to do with it. I mean, remember they played Monday night, so they're a day behind everybody else as well. So let's talk Raiders. Two big things I want to discuss that are kind of big picture. 1,000 feet view here is I have the utmost respect for Al Davis. I mean, I think he's a pioneer in this league. I mean, a brilliant football mind who also became an owner. I mean, most owners aren't football guys. I mean, this guy was a coach. I mean, this guy could X's and O it up with anybody and had amazing ideas, and I love the renegade style. And trust me, I mean, that was like the team you hated most if you were a Steeler fan growing up. I mean, like all out of respect. But frankly, late in life, I think Al lost it, and he had too much power. And there was a good 10, 15 year stretch before Mr. Davis passed away where they rapidly became more or less the worst organization in the league. I mean, all the early draft picks were miss. And it wasn't like, Jamarcus Russell aside, that the Kuipers and McShay thought they were good picks at the time. I mean, they were bizarre picks and bizarre team building, and you can't go get Lyle Alzado off the scrap heap anymore. You know what I mean?
Like a caricature of themselves. It's like, okay, who's got the best 40 time? That's who the Raiders are going to draft. They're going to do something weird in the first round. But they're still a fun team too. But
yes,
there was some level of dysfunction that predated Mark Davis taking over from his dad.
Yes, but I wonder, did son learn bad habits from dad? You know what I mean? I don't know how old Mark was in the 70s when Al was as sharp as possible, but my hunch is Mark learned to kind of be a not great owner from late in life dad. I mean, that's just how all of us sons learn things,
Mark Davis was too young in the 70s to learn enough about it. Might have partied his way through the 80s and then showed up in the 90s and then was like, hey, what's my job going to be in life?
Right. Just throwing on the tracksuit doesn't make you Al, in his prime, and having bad hair, So I think that's the root of the organizational problems. And frankly, bad ownership, we saw this in Washington for years and years, is almost impossible to overcome in this league. I hate to ruin people's, thought process, but bad owners pretty much stay bad owners. They might peak here and there. And then next big picture item I think is really important here is not this past offseason, but the offseason before that, when they traded for Davante Adams. I'm sure they had a heart-to-heart with coach, GM, owner, everyone of major influence in the organization when the season ended 2 years ago. Are we going to try to push our chips in? I did that on purpose. Vegas, get it? Roll the crap dice, whatever, and keep up with Mahomes and Herbert and this AFC. And are we going to spend resources on win now guys? We did just kind of move to Vegas. We got to sell tickets. Is a rebuild going to fly here? COVID also hit this organization harder than any financially. You can't forget about those things. So it's easy to give the Davis family a hard time, but they're a family-owned company. They're not owned by Home Depot or whatever, or, Walmart. And they moved and had to build a stadium and all that at a bad time in our NFL history. But they made the wrong choice that offseason. They pushed their chips in and bid on and put it all on black. See what I did there?
I like that.
Yeah.
You're on a roll.
Yeah, it's been a good day. Halloween hangover. And frankly, it came up red. They put it all on black. And I thought that was easy to see. Is Carr and Adams going to be enough to unlock Mahomes and Allen and Burrow and, all the competition? They should have rebuilt 2 years ago.
So what you're saying is a lot of crap in Las Vegas and not the table game.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And now they don't have a home field advantage. The Steelers went there with 70% Steeler fans. It was just recently, it's such an easy place to go. Every fan base in the world's going to fly in there and party it up. And
I would say business-wise, new stadiums help, and this does show that they can afford to fire a coach and hire a new one again. So that's good news. They at least have enough cash on hand to do those sort of things, right? And so they just have to have the right decision makers. And I don't know if they gave these guys enough time, but the early returns were so bad. And I think part of it was not realizing, to your point, where they were. They weren't like, oh, let's put some icing on this cake and it's going to be a delicious dessert. It was, oh no, we got to start over fresh from scratch and start mixing the flour and the eggs and the sugar in the bowl and bake a new cake here. And so I think that's where they're at right now. Jimmy G looked disastrous. Josh McDaniels looked disastrous as a coordinator, not a coach, maybe for him. And to be honest with you, the Belichick disciples, we've had one, Vrabel, it's been good. Like the Belichick tree is the worst tree of any Hall of Fame coach I can ever remember. It's pretty unbelievable how bad everybody is away from the New England Patriots, and even Bill's not doing great things right now. So,
and I don't think Vrabel actually coached under Belichick. I don't think he was ever a coach on the staff.
Well,
you know what I mean? Yeah,
he was like, I think he started. Wait, where did he start as like a linebackers coach? Was he not in New England?
He was in Houston quite a bit.
So he went straight from a player to coach, but not with.
I'm wondering if he was linebacker coach at Ohio State or something too. His alma mater. He might have done that. Might have been his first gig, but I don't think he was ever on Bill's staff. He obviously played for him. But it's just a side note. I'm glad you brought up the Patriot stuff, though. I mean, how many Patriot castoffs do you bring in and think that's the right answer after so many before you have taken the same approach? I mean, Jimmy versus Carr. I mean, what's the difference? Can't blame.
It's not like even a Brady thing because it's not just the offensive guys. I mean, you go all the way back to Charlie Weiss, who had some success at least at Notre Dame, but then was really bad after his first couple of years there.
Really bad, right.
But the defense.
But I think you're good.
And I'm just saying it's not just offense. It's not, you can't just blame Brady because it's the defensive guys too.
100%. And I think McDaniels and the GMs, right? I mean, everybody. I mean, it's a bad lineage. But I do think Josh has shown that he is not a head coach. I mean, this is now his second try with a fair amount of patience, and his teams aren't good. And frankly, the Monday night game against Detroit was an embarrassment. And I don't think the defense quit, but they just got beat up and had nothing in the tank. And I mean, it was a sad showing.
Antonio Pierce, the interim head coach, announced by the Raiders there. How about this? It's the defense, it's the secondary, it's the quarterback play, and even the offensive line. The Lions defense on Monday night, this is from Next Gen Stats, 71.4% of Jimmy Garoppolo's dropbacks, the highest pressure rate by a defense in a game since 2008. He was pressured on 71.4% of his dropbacks, most in 5 years in the NFL. 5 different Lions defenders generated 3+ pressures. Garoppolo was sacked 6 times on the night, and Garoppolo obviously leads the league in interceptions too. So aside from Davante Adams, not much really you can bank on, and not even Josh Jacobs doing things this year after the year he had last year with the same coaching staff, right? So it's really all bad, and I don't know how you fix it. It's going to have to be a long-term view, and I think they need to take a page out of what the Washington Commanders, I think, started doing at the trade deadline, but they didn't trade anybody yet. Davante Adams, though, could be on the move, and maybe they did him dirty by firing everybody. That because there's a report from Schefter that not a chance in hell was the quote when he asked about if Davante Adams could get traded at the deadline. Why not? They just fired everybody 9 hours later.
Yeah, right. You could actually get something for him. And so 2 other thoughts. I don't know what your thoughts on this are, and I frankly don't have a strong one, but I just think interim head coaches rarely do anything. I mean, sometimes you get a 1-game boost or whatever, but everyone knows the writing's on the wall if the season's shot. And maybe some people are like, well, why did GM have to go? Well, they brought in a lot of Patriot dudes. I mean, swapping Carr for Jimmy made no sense. He was part of the deal to push all your chips in. But here's the biggest deal is these are the Vegas or the Raiders first round picks. I just pulled up drafthistory.com. Tyree Wilson, the jury's still out, but he is very far from impressive at this point.
Yeah.
But these are their first round picks in recent memory. None in 2022. Alex Leatherwood, Henry Ruggs, Damon Arnett, Cleveland Farrell, Josh Jacobs, okay, but he's a back, Jonathan Abram, Colton Miller, okay, he's a good left tackle, but Garyon Conley, Carl Joseph. That's going back to Amani Cooper, Khalil Mack days.
So Josh Jacobs is good, but a running back.
Yeah,
and Colton Miller is the best pick of all those, and the third best guy might be in prison right now.
Right, and I think some of those are out of the league.
Yes, multiple.
I don't think
guys losing their jobs. They're not starters with other teams. Cleveland Farrell, the 49ers have signed or have traded for 2 defensive ends because they don't like what's going on across from Nick Bosa on their defensive line, and Cleveland Farrell might be losing his job to Chase Young, very likely. So not almost backup, not even backup level guys that they're drafting in the first round.
And Gruden has a lot to do with that too. The Gruden-Mayock awfulness too. They get there, they trade Amari Cooper, they trade Khalil Mack, they got all these first round picks, and I just named what they did with those first round picks, which is just flushing Amari Cooper and Khalil Mack down the toilet.
At least now there's no other path. Rebuild for the Las Vegas Raiders.
So I'm going to jump ahead because I know somebody, we'll get to break here in a second, but I know someone asked me, what's the most disappointing trade that didn't happen? I think it's Adams.
100%. I want to dive more into that actually with Adams
definitely.
And with the most disappointing trades. A lot to get into. Halloween is now over. It's November 1st, Matt.
I know.
We're getting into
chilly around here.
Yeah, we're getting into that past the halfway point of the NFL season now with the trade deadline over. Next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by eBay Motors. Our friends at eBay Motors teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for daily fantasy or you are scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed fits on your roster. So let's see who Vinny has picked out for us in this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. And the trade deadline didn't change anything for the Carolina Panthers, who had already chosen a new feature running back, and that is Chuba Hubbard now. The lead duties in week 8 against the Texans, despite Miles Sanders being available. Although Hubbard struggled to get going in that matchup, he could find more running room back at home against the Colts, and the Panthers' power running should yield better results, but Hubbard could also have a bigger impact in the passing game if he's on the field a lot more as well to deliver some all-around fantasy impact. Vinny Iyer of Locked On Fantasy Football, trying to help you win your fantasy championship. And eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit, and it's the same with your vehicle. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guarantee Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. And at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. And it couldn't be easier. I used eBay Motors. There's a big green check mark next to the part that will fit your vehicle. With that guaranteed fit, you know it's the right part, and you get it home and you slap it on. And I was surprised how easy it was to fix up my own vehicle and slap a fender flare on my car. Everything I needed was right there, and saved myself a whole lot of money doing it with eBay Motors. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, exclusions apply. So a couple more notes there on Davante Adams as it pertains to the trade deadline. Did they do him dirty not trading him? And we had a question from JDS and this is before learning about any of the firings happening. Has Davante Adams struggled because it's Davante Adams' fault, or is it all on the QB and the offense? Like, would you be trading for Davante Adams right now if you were another team, or would you have yesterday?
We should also mention, just because it slipped my mind, Aiden O'Connell has been named the starting quarterback too. Talking about rebuilding. I mean,
well, that has to happen. That
has to happen, right?
By the way, the Tennessee Titans, there's like some, if Tannehill's healthy, he's going to start. Are you crazy? I know. If the Tennessee Titans don't start, I don't care what. And I'm surprised Tannehill didn't get traded, to be honest with you. And probably another team didn't call about him is why he didn't get traded. But if you don't start Will Levis every snap that he's healthy the rest of the year, we should start firing those guys too. Like, I don't even know what you would be thinking. I can't believe there's a question of that.
I think, well, let's get to Adams here, but I think Vrabel's in the camp of just keep winning. We're going to grind it out. We're going to give it to Henry a million times. We're going to put Tannehill back in there. We might get the 9 wins and maybe even win this division, which I don't think they have any chance to do. And I don't think they can even get the 9 wins, but I just think that's the mentality there. I mean, trust me, my Steelers kind of have that mentality no matter what. And sometimes you got to know when to hold them and when to fold them. It's time to fold them in Tennessee. But Adams, I think he's still awesome. Like if you ask me the offseason, who are the 5 best wide receivers on the planet, he definitely would have been on the list. He might be 7th or 8th now, passed by like AJ Brown, maybe there's somebody that stepped up and maybe he's slightly 2% less player than he was before. I still think he's awesome. And I haven't broke down every route, but boy, he's open a lot. And I just think that they don't get him the ball nearly enough. And if you're a contender, I don't know what team that would be. I would say the Chiefs first and foremost, but they're in the division. I would give up quite a bit to add him to the roster because it changes the outlook of your team.
And I just feel bad for Davante because of where this season is for him, but there's a very good chance he can get traded in the offseason and end up somewhere. Mm-hmm. But just the rest of this year, it's like, oh my God, you feel like he's hostage a little bit. He did want to go there, but he wanted to go there with a completely different system, quarterback, coach, everything, right?
Yeah. But I also don't feel bad for players that don't get to, I mean, people feel bad for players. He's a really easy guy to root for, but very few people in this league get to dictate who they play for and why. I mean, just because he can't anymore, he joins the 98% of the rest of the league.
He did that opportunity and chose poorly too. So
yeah. I mean, it wasn't the most stable organization when he got there.
Speaking of Will Levis and throwing 4 touchdowns against the Atlanta Falcons, the Falcons have officially made a change at quarterback. Desmond Ritter has been benched in favor of Taylor Heineke. Is that the guy that's going to lead the Atlanta Falcons to the playoffs, man?
Maybe. It has to be better. Right? I think this is a move you have to make. And what people don't think about is when you're the head coach, you got to go look Calais Campbell and Chris Lindstrom and Jake Matthews in the eye and say, I'm playing the best guy to help us win. You know what I mean? Like when they watch these games, they know Ritter's an anchor at this point. And when you talk to those veterans that have 3 kids at home and 25 million in the bank and know how to win in this league, you can't lie to them. I mean, it's different of we're going to play the kid, we'll see how he goes. But when you're hovering around 500 in a very winnable division and they're looking around and the better quarterbacks on the bench, that's when you lose your locker room. And I'm not even saying Heineke's great. He may only play 2 or 3 games. That's usually what he does. He comes in, sparks a team, and then falls back to reality in a Fitzpatrick type of way,
Oh, yeah, that's right. He's Taylor Heineke after a few weeks.
Exactly. He turns into a pumpkin, but he brings a spark.
Right. And they know that, and they still know that that's what they want to do over Desmond Ritter. So that means the coaching staff thinks Desmond Ritter's actively losing them football games, and they need to go to a different quarterback in the journeyman variety that Taylor Heineke is. And also, does that close the book on Desmond Ritter? Like, you're okay. Let's find out who our next quarterback is going to be. That didn't work out. We're this offseason. That's our goal again, to find a new quarterback. And Desmond Ritter, good luck backing up that guy or going somewhere else. Or we've seen quarterback.
I bet it doesn't close the door this year, though, since they didn't add anybody.
Because we've seen like Tua, who was a first-round pick, not a third-round pick, get benched, come back from it, injuries, come back from it. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, right? Like Tua's balling out like crazy. And so is there that opportunity for Desmond Ritter, or as a third-round pick, did he have his chance in blue?
I think Heineke will start a few games, get a spark, turn into a pumpkin. They'll go back to Ritter. Maybe he'll learn a lesson in terms of mistakes. Like, I don't think he throws the ball particularly well. I don't think he throws with a lot of touch. I don't think he layers throws well. I don't think he's particularly accurate. But the killer here is he's taking way too many sacks that are on him. And he has an inordinate number of fumbles, especially in the red zone. So you said it. He's hurting the team. It's not even like they're winning because of him. They're losing because of him. So if he can sit it down for a month and don't fumble as you're going into the end zone, out of the end zone, or, you know what I mean? Tuck the ball away. Maybe he gets another opportunity, but I will bet right now on the day after Halloween, he's not an opening day starter next year.
A question from Randy on YouTube, and there's a few fantasy questions we get a lot of those. He's wondering if with Taylor Heineke is maybe some of those short to intermediate pass catchers in Atlanta where you should target fantasy trades right now before your fantasy trade deadline. So someone like Kyle Pitts, does Kyle Pitts resurrect his fantasy value with someone like Heineke at quarterback?
I like Arthur Smith, their head coach, and I like a lot of the schemes and offensive mind stuff he does. But more so than anyone, he doesn't care about your fantasy team. We know that. Like he may Jonnu Smith it to death and Cordarrelle Patterson it to death one game, or Tyler Algier it up. But I definitely think it helps Pitts, London, probably Bijan too, just because you're probably going to get more first downs and move the football more,
On this note, we got a question about backup quarterbacks in the NFL, Halloween candy, and which teams are dressed up like playoff teams, but we're only in costume. And now that Halloween's over, we're going to find out who they really are. Some good questions still in the hopper. Next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Gametime and the Gametime app. You shouldn't have to worry, and you shouldn't have a bad time buying tickets and getting ready to go to your next big event. It should be super fun. There should be no guesswork involved. So with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the best price guarantee, Gametime takes that guesswork out of buying tickets. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. I love being able to see the view from my seat, so you know what you're going to buy and you know exactly what you're going to get before you arrive at your event, especially a sporting event, right? You want to know what it looks like from that section. And all-in prices show your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal without hidden fees, and that is the worst part about buying tickets to any big event is those hidden fees that show up at the very end. You're ready to pay, and you're like, oh, okay, these seats are twice as much as I thought they were. No hidden fees at Gametime, and super quick, couple taps, you buy those tickets, and they're all right there on the app. You don't have to go fishing through email to find your seats and your tickets once you are at that event. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, speaking of Taylor Heineke and backup quarterbacks in the NFL, we've had this conversation a little bit in the offseason, Matt. And the question here is from Michael on Twitter. Will NFL teams ever get the memo to put more stock in the backup quarterback position, given the number of starter injuries and bad starters the past season and a half?
I was blown away that more Trubisky, Winston, Wentz, Mariota. I'm not saying that those guys are even good. I mean, Wentz is out of the league. Mariota looks horrendous. I thought.
Sorry to interrupt you, but
no,
is Carson Wentz not a better option than Josh Dobbs?
A lot of people are playing with
the Minnesota Vikings right now.
I don't know what's wrong with him. I mean, is he such a
it
terrible person to be around? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a neck up thing. He's been crapped on for two different organizations now or three for leadership. Like maybe he's more of a subtraction than an addition, despite his ability to throw the football.
Reading between the lines, considering the desperate nature of some of these teams, that's what I'm assuming. Or he has some injury we don't know about.
Everyone loves Josh Dobbs, right? So
right. But anyway, I was blown away this offseason after 69 quarterbacks started games in 2022 that there weren't more contracts, higher contracts, more coveted, more competition for average backup quarterbacks. I mean, I always bring it back to Steelers, but like Mason Rudolph is the 50th best quarterback in the league. Steelers brought him back for nothing. He can at least get you out of a game. Some of these dudes that are playing, like DeVito can't play. I mean, you can't even call a pass with that guy. You know what I mean? And the Bears are a good example. Like, I understand T-Bag's a great, guy to chat about, but when Fields is your starter and you have all that cap space and Fields gets, goes in harm's way a lot and he's far from a finished product to begin with, how do you not have a better backup? It blows me away that more resources weren't used on backups this offseason.
I will say, though, I think some teams did get the memo and teams were seeing the 49ers success with Brock Purdy and some other backups. And they started to, because there was actually more highly drafted backup type quarterbacks early in the draft than I expected. Some guys like, probably 6th round prospect. He's going to go in the 4th round, the Aiden O'Connells and
the Stetson Bennett,
Jake Haener. Stetson Bennett in the 4th round. I thought he was a 7th round undrafted type of a guy, despite all his success in college. And so I think some teams did try to do that with their rookie quarterbacks, and we've seen some of those guys get a chance to play. We're going to see Aiden O'Connell now in Las Vegas. So that's one thing I guess they did right in theory.
Yeah, that's actually a great point, because when I said resources, I probably should have said dollars, because I do think some of those lifetime backups, if they're lucky, that we just mentioned, got overdrafted. So I do think the league was aware of that. That's a good point. That's a great point.
This is a great question from Josiah on Twitter. He says, what costume did you wear for Halloween? And what teams do you think are dressed up like a playoff team but are only in costume?
Well, my Halloween was, I got off the air. Trick-or-treating here was from 6 to 8. I got off the air in studio at 6. Then I had to do a Steelers podcast until 6:30. Rushed home, did Peacock and Williamson with you at 7, and then hung up that and did Locked On Dynasty with Ryan, and then all the trick-or-treating was done, and I got to clean it up. So that was what I did.
So that the next question then is going to be for you then, because that was the only portion of Halloween you got to enjoy is the candy and the post-Halloween maybe beverage. But and for me, I didn't dress up at all, and I really never dressed up. Something that dawns on me in the last minute. I'm like, should I put on a costume to go with my son trick-or-treating, who's 5 and in kindergarten and all about it? And I'm like, nope, I'm just going to put on a hoodie like I do every day and walk with him down the street. He was Optimus Prime, though, Transformer, and his costume actually kind of transformed, which is pretty cool. So he could go from truck and lay down and then stand up, and he was Optimus Prime, the robot, and he had a great time. So
that's all matters. That's awesome.
In our neighborhood. And our neighborhood gets super into it, too. It was like bands playing, and every house is over the top in this one little neighborhood. So that's kind of fun.
That's right.
But as far as teams, who is only dressing up the first half of the season as a playoff team?
See, I'm struggling with this one. I saw this at Advance. I think
the Raiders for a little while tried to pretend that they were going to wear a playoff costume. That came crashing down the last 3 weeks.
So the teams I came up with were the Jets, Steelers, Browns, because they all have winning records, but I don't know that their costumes were very convincing. You know what I mean?
To be honest with you, the other team we've talked about a lot today, the Falcons, I would put right up there.
If they weren't in the NFC South, yes, because I still think them and the Saints and the Bucks aren't playoff teams, but one of them's going to go.
One of them's going to go, right? So yeah, someone gets to keep someone's going to keep their costume on for one game in January, basically.
Yeah, and I'm not so sure that 2 South teams don't make it, especially with the Cousins injury and Stafford getting hurt now.
I mean, there's not a lot of good teams for that last couple of wild card spots, but you're going to get 2 out of the West. You're going to get 2 out of the East. And that's true.
And then another, I mean, then maybe the Saints or Falcons get the 9 wins and get in because they have easy schedules.
There's going to be a bad playoff costume or 2 in the NFC. That's for sure.
You're gonna be pretty happy if you're the 2 seed. I mean, you'd love the bye, but you're gonna have a pretty easy first game.
And the other better teams all made additions in the NFC at the trade deadline too.
Yeah. Like, again, I don't know if the Steelers, Browns, and Jets are playoff teams, but
I think Steelers is a good one right now because it's I mean, they're better than they were the early portion of the season, but I don't know if they're a playoff contender, especially in that division, which is going to be tough. And it's going to be, I think, Cincinnati and Baltimore at the top in the end. And if the Browns don't figure out quarterback, I don't know if they can hang on either. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. And the Jets, to me, like, we on our Steelers show, we did, went through someone's power ranks, and they had the Jets at like 14. I'm like, they're not a good football team. They just beat a dismal Giants team.
You know what the Jets are? The Jets are the Phantom in the Scooby-Doo episodes because they
pull the mask off.
You pull off the mask, it's Zach Wilson under there, but then you pull off the Zach Wilson mask, and it's Aaron Rodgers again, and maybe they are a playoff team. So that
maybe. They can hang around. I mean,
Aaron Rodgers, I don't know if it's hype. I don't know if he's on too much hallucinogens or what, but he's moving around pretty good for the Achilles injury. He thinks he's going to come back. If they're in it late in the season, it's looking like it's not an impossibility that maybe Aaron Rodgers is ready to play games in December, January. But can they hang on that long with Zach Wilson is the question. And after the bye, he looked bad again and is like, oh gosh, okay, they're not going to be there.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think they have a mask on right now, though.
Last one, real quick. We got to go, but you only get to choose one, Matt. Devo says, pick one Halloween candy and only one. Williamson, you can't say tequila.
So I'm a big like Twizzlers and that type of fan, but I'm going to keep it candy bar only because my best buds and I, we have this text thread with like 15 of us on it. And late last night, it came up and we were all debating. And I think the most underrated and my number one bar out there is the $100,000 bar. It's a winner, man.
That's a good call. I didn't really even come up with that one. And I didn't see any in my son's trick-or-treating bag. And $100,000 when I was younger was my number one. I loved $100,000. Yeah. So that's a great call there.
That's how our text threads were. Someone threw it out there like, man, $100,000 is the most underrated bar. And I'm like, that's my number one. And like 5 other guys were like, you're right. That's number one on my list. Who knew?
There was like the Take 5, and there was like some candies you just don't see anymore, which is really strange.
I threw out. I can't believe 3 Musketeers aren't extinct by now. They're so terrible.
I've always hated like the Mounds Almond Joy. I don't do coconut. So
anything with coconut, I said, is terrible.
To be honest with you,
peppermint patty's terrible.
Yeah, my biggest take with Halloween candy is it's utter trash, all of it, and I don't even want it. I don't want it in my mouth.
Agree.
I don't even want the urge to maybe grab one out and eat one because it's never worth it. It's all really bad. So I don't have a strong take on it. I think the chocolate doesn't even taste like chocolate. It's terrible. So, but if there's one that I hope is in there, it would be the peanut butter chocolate combination of a Reese's peanut butter cup, and they do have the dark chocolate version. So if there's a dark chocolate Reese's peanut butter cup, that's the one I would reach for. If not, it'd probably have to be something like a Sour Patch Kid or sour.
That kind of stuff I like. Yeah. But keep it at the candy bars. I went with my top 3 as $100,000, Butterfinger, Baby Ruth.
Okay.
I mean,
I can get behind that.
A little off the beaten path.
Yeah. Was a big Milk Dud guy too when I was a kid.
I threw them out there too. Underrated Milk Dud. Yep.
There you go. All right.
If you need a filling that needs popped out, the Milk Dud will help.
I hope everyone had a great Halloween. We're into November. It's nitty gritty time. Second half of the NFL season is arriving very soon. Thanks to all the listeners out there, all the everydayers out there, and everyone getting your questions in. Lots of good ones. We can never get to all of them, and you can get involved in next Wednesday's mailbag as well. You don't have to wait until Wednesday or Tuesday either. at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL on Twitter. Drop a question in the YouTube comments. Matt and I back tomorrow. Peacock and Williamson.